So this is chapter 1 of the book, No Drama Discipline, that we are reviewing. And it calls us to rethink discipline. It's titled Rethinking Discipline. So these are some common scenarios with parents where you get upset and you just react when your child acts in a way that they shouldn't. Another scenario is when you know what not to do. Okay, you've been told you shouldn't spank, but then you don't know what to do instead of raising your voice. Okay, what are the better solutions? You don't know what to do other than maybe threaten or give them some consequence. Another scenario is when you and your partner do not agree on discipline strategies. Okay, maybe you feel like your partner is too harsh, or while you are a bit of a pushover. So there's inconsistency there and some kind of irritation and resentment as to how both of you approach discipline. There's also the scenario where you just get stuck because the cycle of unproductive discipline keeps happening in your home. So many parents, most parents, want to handle things differently, but they don't know how. They just end up reacting to the situation. This book is going to equip you with an arsenal of tools and strategies, so you are not just reacting to a situation you don't like. You know exactly what to pull out. You know exactly what to say, what to do in a situation where your child is acting out. Instead of you to be reactive, you want to be responsive. You want to be intentional. You want to make a conscious decision on how you intend to go about handling the situation, which is what the no drama discipline means. It means that you reduce the chaos. You are able to meet the dual goals of discipline that this book shares, which is goal number 1. You want the child to reduce the unhealthy behavior. But the second goal is that you want to build a structure in the child's mind that will build long-term skills for self-regulation. Okay? What you need to know, what you need as a parent, is a clear understanding of what you actually want to achieve whenever your child misbehaves. You want to have a philosophy of, what do I want to achieve? And the way to go about that is to ask these 3 questions. Number 1, so your child misbehaves, and within the few moments before you respond, you're asking yourself, why did my child act this way? You want to approach it with curiosity, not assumption. It's not acting this way because he's a spoiled brat. He's not acting this way because he's trying to upset you or push your buttons. No. Approach it with actual curiosity. Why did my child act this way? You want to look deeper at what's going on behind this misbehavior. What is my child trying to express? There's usually something that the child is trying to tell you when they act this way. Now, the second question is, what lesson do I want to teach my child in this moment? Remember that the goal of discipline is not punishment, it's not consequence, it's instruction, it's tutelage, teaching. And the third question is, how best can I teach this lesson? Those are the 3 questions that you need to ask yourself before you react to any scenario that is outside your acceptable, what is acceptable by you as a parent, okay? So understand that there are usually better, more effective, and more loving ways to approach your child's misbehavior than consequences. It may seem a bit difficult now, but with practice, it becomes effortless and easy for you to approach discipline this way by simply just asking, why is my child acting this way? What do I want to teach this child, and how do I best go about it? Instead of just reacting. So as quickly as possible, you ask these 3 questions. So if, for example, your 4-year-old hits you, instead of reacting and saying, why did you hit me, and all that, you need to, out of curiosity, ask why your child hit you within your own self. It could be that the child is frustrated, wants your attention. Digging deep underneath the behavior is really going to help us approach this better. And we need to understand that children of younger ages, they have developing brains. Most of the time, it's not that they don't want to act right, it's that they cannot yet act right because their brains have not developed to self-regulate yet. And maybe hitting you is his way of expressing his feelings. Okay, children usually lash out because they don't have the capacity to regulate their emotional states and control their impulses just yet. So don't take it personally. Now, the lesson you want to teach in such a situation is you want to teach the child that hitting is not okay, that there are better ways to express their feelings. So how best do you teach this? First, you have to connect. Remember, to correct a child, you must connect with them first. Pull them close to you and let them know that they have your full attention. Then you acknowledge their feelings. Acknowledge and then model how you want to communicate, how you want them to communicate their emotions going forward. So for example, you get hit by a child. You want to pull that child closer and say, "What's the matter? Are you upset?" And help them to label that emotion. Are you upset that I am busy and I'm not giving you my attention? Usually, or maybe, are you upset that your brother is not sharing his toys with you? Try to help the child label that behavior, because the more you teach them to label their emotions, the more they are going to be able to label it as they grow, rather than lashing out. They'll be able to assess what's going on within me right now by themselves. So you label it, and if they say yes, it is at the point where you acknowledge their feelings that their pathways become open for correction. If you shut down what a child is feeling, their frustration or their anger, there is nothing you're going to say that will permeate them to instill that correction you're looking for. So when you acknowledge a child and you say, "I know it's hard to wait, right? I know you're frustrated, right?" And the child says yes, it is at that point that when the child is calmer, that is better able to listen, you have eye contact with the child, that is the point that you begin to tell the child, hitting is not okay. Hands are not for hitting. Hands are for hugging, holding, lifting. We don't hit. That is when the child becomes receptive to correction. And then you tell the child what to do instead. Because it's not just to tell the child what not to do. You also want to teach. This is the core of discipline, instruction. Next time, when you want my attention, use your words. Next time, you can politely ask your brother if he would like to share his toys. This is discipline, instruction, not slapping, hitting, or raising your voice, or invalidating their feelings. So there are other scenarios where you could apply these 3 questions. Why did my child act this way? Maybe your child is feeling frustrated or helpless. Maybe your child is feeling overwhelmed, tired, sleeplessness. These are things that can make children act out. What do you want to teach? It could be effective time management. It could be patience, waiting your turn. Whatever the lesson you want to teach, ask yourself, how best can I teach? Remember, before you start teaching, you have to connect. So this is the pattern. Knowing why your child acted the way they did, what lesson you want to teach them, and how to go about teaching them. And connect first before you start instructing them on what to do. So you tell them what not to do, why is unacceptable, and then afterwards you insert what to do instead. Next time you can do this. Next time you can do this. And with time, they will begin to act out those patterns on their own. So there are other very good examples within the book that show you exactly how to go about this. Instead of just lecturing your child for something like, you don't listen in class. Why can't you remember what your teacher said? Maybe they are trying to work on their assignment. You need to be more responsible. You need to listen more in class. Instead of lecturing them, if you approach With these 3 questions alone, why is my child not paying attention in class? And next question, which is, what do I want to teach? I want to teach them to pay attention. How do I go about this? Number 1, I connect with them first. What's the matter? Why are you not listening in class? Are you tired? Are you sleepy? Are you feeling pain? Is it that you don't like your teacher? What is the matter? Are you being bullied in class? Do you feel left behind? Is the teacher talking too fast? And you try to pull out those questions from your child because you are genuinely concerned. You will even create an opportunity to get to know your child more and get to know what is really happening in their lives and why they do what they do. So you can have an opportunity to better guide them before things escalate. So you're getting a lot of benefits from just calming down and showing honest curiosity. The other part of this chapter is can't versus won't. Discipline is not one size fits all. Our children are children. They are children. They are not adults. And for us to expect behavior that is beyond their developmental capacity is unfair, because it takes a long time before a child's brain, all the parts of the brain, develop to a point where they can better manage their emotions. Okay? Children will display emotional reactivity, okay? Because developmentally they are still working, their brains are still being developed. Their brains are not fully formed yet. So when we discipline, we must consider the child's developmental capacity first. So it's not that the child will not behave well, it's that the child does not yet have the fully formed brain to give that behavior, to maintain calm, to think through their actions. They can't regulate themselves. It's not like they are choosing not to, or they are trying to be defiant. They can't. It's important we understand this about young children. And anybody's capacity to handle situations well or make good decisions can fluctuate depending on the circumstance and the context of the situation. So you are, even as an adult, you are not always in the best frame of mind to handle things properly all the time. It depends on your mood. It depends on what's going on with you at the moment. So giving that same grace to our children is important. Our capacity fluctuates based on our state of mind, state of body, and these different states can be influenced by many factors, especially in the case of a child that's still developing. So hunger, sleeplessness, tiredness, pain, discomfort, whatever, can definitely affect the way they behave. So let's call them that slack. It's important for us to call them that slack, that they're still developing. It's not always a case of willful opposition, that they're trying to be defiant towards us. Okay. So I think this is a very important question that the authors have asked us, that yes, we want our children to be disciplined. We want them to cooperate with us and act right. But complete and unquestioning obedience is not what we want from them. Do we want our children to grow up blindly obeying everyone in their entire lives? Or would we rather have them develop their own individual personalities and identities? Would we rather have them learning along the way what it means to get along with others, what it means to observe limits, make good decisions, and be self-disciplined, and what it means to navigate difficult situations by thinking for themselves? This is such an important question. I don't want blind obedience. I want my children to be able to think and make good decisions based on well thought out a thinking pattern that helps them make better decisions, rather than just blindly following because obedience is the goal. Just do what I say because I said so. No, I want you to be able to develop your own internal compass. So here the authors touch on spanking and how it affects the brain. This one was a heavy hitter for me. Spanking is counterproductive because it doesn't help you to build a respectful relationship with your children. It doesn't teach your children the lessons that you actually want them to learn. And it doesn't encourage optimal development. Children should have the right to be free from any form of violence, and spanking is physical violence, especially at the hands of the people they trust most to protect them. Spanking is damaging to their brain because it confuses the child. You are supposed to be the safety, their safety, and for you to hit them sends confusing signals in their brain. And some people talk about timeouts. Timeouts don't involve spanking, but are they effective? And the authors say that isolating children for long periods of time, humiliating them or terrifying them by screaming, these things wound the mind of a child. They wound the child's mind. We want to avoid any discipline that is aggressive, that inflicts pain, or creates fear or terror. Because when you approach discipline by spanking, shouting, unnecessarily long timeouts, or isolating them, or shouting them down, the attention of the child shifts from their own bad behavior and how to change it to your response to the behavior. So the child is no longer considering their own behavior. Instead, they're thinking about how unfair or mean you are to hurt them this way, or even how scary you were in the moment you were inflicting that pain on them. So psychologically, the brain interprets pain as a threat. So when you physically hurt a child, the child begins to face a paradox. Okay, because on the one hand, they are born to go towards their caregivers for protection when they're hurt. But when that caregiver is also the source of pain, when you are the one causing the terror inside the child, it can be very confusing for your child's brain, because one circuit is driving the child to escape you who is inflicting the pain, and another circuit is driving the child towards you because you are the figure of safety for them. So when the caregiver is the source of pain, the brain is disorganized. It becomes disorganized. And this is toxic. It releases a stress hormone, which is cortisol, which is toxic to the brain and inhibits healthy growth. I think this is one of the most compelling arguments against hitting or spanking your child. And it definitely changed my life. The next thing is, another reason why spanking is unproductive is, what you do to your child is what they learn. And do you want to teach your children that the way to resolve conflict is to inflict physical pain? That's how bullies are born. Because once they get into conflict at school with their peers, next thing they raise their hands. So if you do that to your child, you're teaching them that this is the way to resolve conflict, particularly on someone who is defenseless and cannot fight back. It's an anomaly. It shouldn't be. Inflicting physical pain is also creating social rejection in your child's brain, because even though the spanking will stop the behavior in that moment, it's not as effective as helping the child to change that behavior long term. So spanking will not help your children to be more open to you about their weaknesses. Rather, they will just get better at concealing what they've done. So they'll get better at lying and hiding. That's not what you want to achieve. These are arguments against spanking. So it says here that when we cause our children to experience fear, pain, and anger, we activate an increase in the flow of information to the primitive reactive brain, instead of directing that flow to the thinking, receptive, sophisticated brain. where wise decisions are being made. So you are activating the more reptilian brain, which the authors described down the line. And this is not what we want. I think those are very good arguments. And they talked about timeouts. And what they're saying during regarding timeouts is, as far as it is well done, which is short periods of time, and clearly explain, if it's supposed to last for not more than 5 minutes, between 3 to 5 minutes, and it's supposed to be followed by instruction as well. But instead of it to be used to create a teaching opportunity as part of, it's supposed to be part of a more holistic discipline strategy. It's not supposed to be a punishment tool. So if you don't operate timeout correctly, it can be counterproductive. Okay, so instead of the child to have the time to self-reflect on their actions, they are upset and they're like, I've got the worst parents in the world. They're sending me away. They don't want to be around me. So it's about using timeouts effectively, short periods of time. If you know exactly how to use it, it can be very productive. But if you abuse it by just sending the child away lengthy periods of time and using it as a means of humiliation or punishment, you're not going to get the required results from timeouts. It shouldn't be an emotional tool to hurt your child, a tool that hurts your child emotionally. And punishment or discipline is not one size fits all. Remember that discipline means to teach, not to punish. So there's always that opportunity for you to give instructions and bring the child in to evaluate what better ways can we go about this. The focus should be teaching the child a lesson, not on punishing the child. If the child has made a mess, we work together to clean it up. Let's remember that when your child acts out, that is when they need to connect the most. So time out, sending them away from you is not a very good approach to helping build that connection between you and your child. What you want to encourage actually is a time in. According to this book, a time in is a time to calm down, a time to reflect on your behavior. Teaching children how to pause and take some time to reflect inwards, some time in, it's essential to helping them build those executive functions we talked about, helping them reduce their impulsivity and become more focused on what they have done. Time in is created in relationship, not in isolation, administered as a punishment. Okay, so time in rather than time out is better. And to have that time in, you want to be giving them instruction. You want them to calm down, which is connecting, which is where connecting with them comes to play. You don't want to send a message to your child that I only want to be with you when you are of your best behavior, when you are happy. Let the child know that irrespective of my state, my parents, my caregivers are always open to receive me. So when handled correctly in the appropriate manner, timeouts can absolutely help accomplish that goal. But angrily forcing the child to go off and sit by themselves for a long time can feel like abandonment to a child, especially if the child is feeling out of control already. It may even send the subtle message that when you are not perfect, I don't want to be close to you. And that's not the kind of message we want to send to our children. Okay? So this is why the authors encourage a time in rather than a time out. They also encourage us to have a discipline philosophy. What strategy do we have when it comes to discipline? Is it reactivity, or do we have tools up our sleeves as parents on what to do, irrespective of the situation? So the questions they ask us to ask ourselves is, do I have a discipline philosophy? How purposeful and consistent am I when I want to approach discipline, when my children are not behaving the way I like? Is what I'm doing working? So you know what you've been doing and you can answer that question for yourself. Do I feel good about what I'm doing? Do my children feel good about it? Do I feel good about the messages I'm communicating to my children? Because if you're always shouting or beating, you are telling your children, you're sending a message to them that this is how to interact with people going forward. And that's how bullies are made. How much does my approach resemble that of my parents, my own parents? So sometimes we realize that we are treating our children the way we were treated, even though we may not want it. So the next question is, does my approach ever lead to my children apologizing in a sincere manner? Or they just end up apologizing because I forced them to? Does it allow for me to take responsibility and apologize for my own actions? How open are you with your children about the fact that you make mistakes? Are you willing to model for them what it means to own up to your own errors? There are parents that cannot fathom apologizing to their children, but it's absolutely critical that we apologize to them, because if we do not accept that we make mistakes, they're going to be proud and they don't know what it means to apologize. It's not been modeled for them. So these are the questions that will help us to better evaluate our discipline strategies. So it says here that when we know better, definitely when we know better, we do better. Our children's brains are extremely plastic, so they are changing in structure in response to experience. So this is kind of a good news, because if up to this moment you've been disciplining in the wrong way, you don't have to be scared that you've damaged your child, because the brain, there's something called neuroplasticity, which means that the brain is always changing based on experiences. So you can change the experiences you give to your children in order to reform their brains. And they end up by saying that none of us are perfect, okay? But we can take steps to model calm and self-control when our children mess up. We can steer clear of the one-size-fits-all disciplinary technique. We can offer the two goals of shaping external behaviors and learning internal skills. So you want them to stop the bad behavior, but you also want them to develop a sense of self-regulation. So this is chapter 1, and it calls us to rethink discipline. It's quite life-changing. It depends on how much you give thought to it. It personally impacted me deeply, and I hope it does for you too.